Funny that it's Essendon player testing positive or something, isn't it?
Pull your finger out of your ass.
Jeez.
This is my first ever football jumper. My three votes, I should say. My three goats. My three votes for Charlie. Oh, top of the world, mate.
What a time to be alive.
I look a bit like Nickel Bellic from GTA 4, I feel, with this.
That could get dangerous.
Hello and welcome to Attention to Detail, the podcast for Dees fans by Dees fans as we jump on this rollercoaster ride that is barracking for the Melbourne Football Club. My name is Tim. I'm joined by Simmo here as always, and it's actually a very special episode today. We are joined by Quinn and Marcus from the Pressure Point podcast. Boys, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome aboard.
Tim, Simmo, thanks for having us,
Boys.
Much appreciated.
It's, first for both of us, a joint episode, and just thought you might want to start off with telling us a little bit about your show and how you boys got your show started and what it's all about.
I'll let you start this one, Marcus, and I'll jump in midway through when you start making mistakes.
We'll see about that. But yeah, mate, we started probably about 12 months ago now, or just over 12 months when we had that break between round 1 and round 2 last year, that 3-month hiatus, and it was in the works for a while, and we just never really found the right time to do it. And then we thought, why not? It's a 3-month lockdown, got it started, and out of my old room at my parents' place where I don't live anymore, we turned that into a studio, and it's where Quinn is right now. And and we've just been at it every week since then, and it's been good fun. And the inspiration, which I think a lot of people might know with the name, is Pressure Point, and from the famous Brendan Favola incident at the Brownlow over 10 years ago now. And obviously, for people that listen to our podcast, I'm a massive Carlton supporter, so got a lot of inspiration from there. And then me and Quinn obviously both love our footy, and thought, why not make a podcast and talk about it every week? And I mean, that's our story really. It's been good fun, and loved every minute of it.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head. I was waiting for a few gaps in the story, but you've covered it quite nicely there, Marcus. Well done.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. But unless you got anything else to add, Quinn.
No, that's pretty much it. Like you said, we'd actually been talking about doing it for a while, and I think neither of us were sure if we're both serious about the idea of doing it, and we just sort of kept tossing the idea up and mentioning it. And then, like you said, once lockdown kicked in the first time round and that gap between the two, round 1 and round 2, we just had all the time like, let's just do it. And then, it turned out a lot of people thought podcasts are a good idea at the same time, but it's good that, for us, especially, we're still going with it all, and we're trying to take it as seriously as we can.
That's it. And similar to yourselves, like the idea got born out of lockdown as well too, and it sort of became a bit of a venting avenue for me and the Dees. And I suppose the difference between us is that you guys cover all aspects of footy and all teams, whereas we're pretty one-eyed Melbourne and create some pretty biased content, which we know that there's a small market for. But it's certainly worked out well for this season, and we're getting a fair few listeners on board, and it's nice to ride all the highs that we're enjoying at the moment. But obviously Simmo has joined us this year, and it's been an awesome addition to another teaching colleague that we kind of again met ourselves back in early teaching rounds, and probably a few years, what was it, 2017? Yeah. So similar to yourself, we managed to get a few guests and stuff on board, which is really exciting, and it ends up being a bloody full-time job almost. It's really starting to, trying to find that balance between that and for myself and family time and whatnot. But it's good fun. It's somewhere to sort of vent all your passion, and as you said, finding an audience and finding a voice and just talking about such a fantastic game for all the people to enjoy.
Absolutely. And you, mate, you say that you're biased with the Dees. Well, we do. We speak about AFL in general, but I tell you what, when Carlton's not going great, which has been most of the time, I almost turned it into a Carlton channel, and Quinn the same with Richmond. Especially because they won the flag last year, so it's been a pretty good start for him. But we certainly can make it biased from time to time as well.
Simo, you got anything to add there, mate?
Look, to be honest, when you asked me to, actually, I saw you share a few things on Facebook. I was like, hang on a second, I reckon he runs this. So do you remember this? I actually gave you a cheeky little message and saying, do you run the podcast? And you're like, yeah. Do you want to come on for one? I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do it. So I was like, you know what, this could be something a little bit interesting. I actually was listening to our first podcast last night, just reminiscing about the differences between now and then. And I tell you what, I was very structured when I started compared to now. It's a lot more easy going, and I think when the faith has been restored in our football club, it's a little bit easier to talk about all the awesome stuff that's going on this year.
Oh, well, it's certainly easy to talk about when we're going shit as well too, which we're very accustomed to, and you know, being repeatedly let down over the last few years. That's very easy to whinge on about as well too. But yeah, this year's been especially exciting, and plenty of people tuning in to sort of celebrate all the successes that we're having so far. So it is a bit of a Melbourne-based episode today, and thought we'd go through a bit of a mid-season review for the side so far. But boys, from a non-Melbourne supporter point of view, how would you rate? What are you seeing externally from the Dees at the moment? Have you got any thoughts on a non-supporter-based opinion?
Well, absolutely scary at the moment when I think about the D's from where they were to where they've come at this point in the season. And I remember early on, I was quick to doubt you boys. I was thinking, that who have they beaten? They haven't beaten anybody good. And then sure enough, you knocked us off. And I thought, oh, geez, the Tigers have been rolled over by these guys. And then it just kept coming. And you guys just keep constantly showing up against good sides and getting the job done. And I thought, especially after last week, I thought, no, these guys are the real deal now. And it's just scary how quickly you've made that jump from, probably the lower positions in the ladder to top of the ladder now and absolutely flying.
100%. I reckon, well, from what you're saying, we'll, as Melbourne supporters, expecting this 2019 after we had such a good year in 2018. But to finally let it, the everything's coming together sort of this year. But, the weights has been worth it, although it was quite hard. But, we're finally reaping the rewards now.
Absolutely. I think Tim and I were speaking about this the other day, but what's the mentality shift been like from going into games and thinking we're going to win this, or, we should be winning this game? Because I know for me early on when Richmond made the switch and started actually winning games, it took me a while to sort of think we're a good side and we can actually start winning these sorts of games. What's the mentality shift been like for you boys? Have you found it's already kicked in, or are you still having a lot of doubt when you head into games?
Well, for me, it's maturity from the D's. We could see it with, our best players are starting to get, the 100, 150 games under their belt. And now now we can actually go to games or watch games and have full faith in the side, both from a defensive and offensive standpoint. It's just been, really good to see making that shift, I suppose, because, with quite a young side, I think we kind of peaked and we over succeeded, to be honest, in 2018, and none of us really thought Dees would come flying out in that year. So to see that those players continue to develop now and start, as I said, getting 100, 150 games under their belt, we can see that maturity really developing.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think's been what's impressed you the most? I know a lot of people talk about your defensive game, like your defense is so solid, nothing gets past you. But does it come down to that, or like what's impressed you the most, and what's made you the team that you are now?
I think that sort of getting back to just the consistency, I don't think it's something that Melbourne fans have seen for a long, long time. You sort of talked about the mentality of going to watch a game, or even whether you're going into the ground or whether you're watching it from home. Unfortunately, all Melbourne supporters will have that dread of going in to a game, say, for instance, against a bottom four side. And in previous years, we've known that it's, oh, shit, this is a danger game. Like, hate to say, Marcus Carlton, but like it's a perfect example where ones in years gone by where we've certainly gone in and, Carlton has sort of been cellar dwelling a little bit, and we sort of go in being those games that we should be expected to win, and we were more than likely coughing it up. So from that to see, I think this year, just consistent footy from us, this so-called brand of footy that Goody's been preaching for like 3 years to be building and building and building. And I think, it was terms, Goody's pretty good at using a lot of this terminology. It seems like a bit robotic in some of his press conferences. I don't know if you've seen, like, if you watch one, you've almost seen them all in terms of all the words that he uses. But it's sort of that build-up from there has now started to click in about, culture and rewriting the narrative and this year, I think Kate Ruffy sort of talked about this the other day or the other week when we talked to her about everything just seems to be clicking. So, like, as fans, you get impatient when there's a lot of talk and you don't see a lot of it being backed up on the field, or, you know, there's stuff going on behind the scenes. But this year, I think we've managed to go week in, week out, we've been tested multiple times. Like, Sydney game was a fantastic game where that was something that we got taken out of our comfort zone. We didn't play the style of footy that we had been playing those first 4 or 5 rounds. You know, it was completely scrappy, but we were able to will the ball over the line and get the win there. And I think from that on as well too, you're going to see teams that are trying to target our game style, but we've still managed to be able to respond, make situational changes at halftime with coaching, which has been something I don't think we've had in the last few years as well too. So the balance, everything just seems to be clicking at the moment. And I mean, there's a lot of talk about selflessness and, you know, each player executing their role. And I think, you know, Quinn Richmond's been quoted a lot in terms of basing it upon some of the model that a lot of the talk that came out of that, especially after the first couple of premierships, about each player understanding what their role is in the team. And I think that's really evident now, where you look at your different structures around the forward half and the back half of the game, and each player, you know, they're not after 30 touches. They're, you know, you got your Spargos, your Neil Bullens, that's creating havoc forward pressure up there with Cozzy. You got your players in the back line, you know, Hibberd doing a number of run with roles, you know, that's going kind of slightly unnoticed as well too. So everything just seems to be coming together at the moment at the right time, and it's, yeah, really rewarding.
And from an outsider's point of view as well, I think the change over the last couple of years with blokes such as Petrarca and, you know, Clary and even Brayshaw as well, some of the blokes like that seemed like they were playing in the past for almost personal gain, if that makes sense. So sort of, you know, whether that be best and fairest or all Australian accolades. And I'm not saying that they were bad players, obviously the superstars, but now it just seems like everybody, like you said, is playing their role. They're all gelling so well together. And coincidentally, out of that, you'll probably have 5 or 6 blokes this year that'll push for all Australian or, you know, yeah, be up there in Brownlow contention. So it's almost funny how it works out when you start playing more for the team. These almost individual accolades seem to, you know, come as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think Oliver was a good one that I think he mentioned it the other week in a press conference, in an interview, and said Goody was one of the ones, you know, in terms of accepting their role. But he said had a chat to Goody in the off season, and I think Clary is probably somebody that had been targeted for that a little bit, like somebody that, you know, could accumulate the ball, accumulate possessions, you know, really highly, but in fact have been damaging with them, maybe not so much. But you can see now, I mean, he's had some absolute standout games where he's actually had to carry us up and over the line. I think the Brisbane game's a good example of him playing an absolute, you know, wrecking ball second half and being damaging with the ball, and not just, you know, getting in and out, getting the ball in and out of the contest, but actually pushing forward, hitting the scoreboard a little bit, and even taking some defensive marks. Like, you can think about the whole team defense as well too. Like, to see him running both ways, and the defense not just seen as a back six, it's all 18 blokes that are on the field at the time. You know, I think that he's somebody that's really stood up as well, and being able to, yeah, accept that maybe, you know, in the past his role has changed, or his mentality of how he's approaching his role within the club has certainly changed, and, you know, everybody on the side is definitely reaping the rewards for it. Simmo, you got anything to add there?
No, I think you've summed it up perfectly, my friend. It's like, I mean, I said it before, restoring the faith, and I think just a lot of buy-in from players. You know, you touch on, you know, your Brayshaws, your Petrarcas, your Clayton Olivers. It'll be interesting to see when Viney comes back to see where he sort of fits into this now too. Because, I mean, for when he was in the side at the start of the season, we could see the selflessness there. But it'd be really interesting having him being out for so long, and how quickly he readjusts to how we're going would be, yeah, really, really interesting to see. But yeah, having buy-in from the whole team is, yeah, it's a reason why we're 11-1.
Now, that buy-in, do you guys think that that's probably the biggest difference when comparing your 2018 season to this year? Obviously, 2018 was impressive all the way through, and then, you know, we know it did drop after that a little bit. But do you think this year's buy-in is the main difference between 2018 and 2021?
Definitely. I think when in 2018, I think, as I said before, we sort of, probably peaked. We peaked when we probably were still developing. Things just sort of fell into place quite well that year. But compared to that year and this year, I think just on a defensive probably standpoint, we're more balanced. To be honest, in 2018, we had higher scoring games, but that was back when the 666 rule was not apparent, and we had those players coming off the back of the square. We sort of did something outside the box, and it made things really hard for other teams to sort of conquer that. And you saw with this shift when 666 happened, you saw our drop 2019, 2020 as opposed to now. I think just more so just buying into a system, which is something that I think had to take time because obviously we had to adjust to the rule changes and everything. And having a fit lever in May is a definite big up for us too.
Yeah, just to go on with that, it was interesting to go over, just scour the lists from 2018 to 2021 and just see some of the personnel changes, both, on the field and behind the coach's box as well too. So 2018, I was looking just at some key contributors that played for a majority of that season. So you got Jordan Lewis that played 24 games, obviously was brought to the club, in that kind of in those circumstances where, wanted to find another home where he could potentially have some success with another club, and he did wonders for our club with the leadership and also hung around at the club afterwards. But you've also got Hogan, who played 20 games, missed the final series, but kicked 50 goals. So there's 50 goals there that we don't have from that same person there. You've got Dom Tyson that played 17 games. That was Lever's first season with the club, and obviously did his ACL that year. So there's no fit lever there. A back line sort of consisted, we had Sam Frost as well. We had no May at that stage. You had players like Oscar McDonald played 25 games. We had Jeffy Garlett still on the list. We had Bernie Vince, who still played a fair bit of the season towards the end of his career, Cam Pedersen. So a lot of those players that aren't with the team at the moment. I know Simmo talked about the core. The core remains relatively the same right now. So there's that core of players that would have had 50, 60 games experience now have 100, 120, 150 games. And then, talk about premiership window and that, the peak athlete age, talking about that 24 to 27 range where they're really at the peak of their powers. This is the time now. So you're looking at 2021 where we've got other players. So as we said, a fit Jake Lever, who's now got a full consistent season under his belt, or a couple of seasons under his belt now, and is looking in the best form that he's been since he's arrived at the club. You've got Stephen May, who's definitely All-Australian contender. You're looking at our top three draft picks from 2019 to amazing that they've just managed to, jump straight in, and they've barely missed a beat since. So your Rivers, your Pickett, and your Jackson, you've got addressing the needs that we had on the wing. So with Ed Langdon, who's been playing outstanding. Tomo came across from GWS, unfortunately, not playing at the moment. And then some, other younger developing players, your Tom Sparrows, your James Jordans, and then even, Benny Brown obviously hasn't had much of an impact yet, but it was interesting looking at those, those figures that complement, I think, the areas that we needed to address. And then you've got coaches such as, Adam Uze, Williams, and Alan Richardson, who I know is not behind the coach's box at the moment. He's, I think, head of football or whatever it is at the moment. But those little things that they've now identified as weaknesses over the last couple of years have managed to now sort of all fit into place. And I think that personnel, they've got the balance and the mix right. And you can kind of see, I think you said, Quinn, to me the other day, there's no holes in the club at the moment. We can't see any holes on the list. And the depth obviously is proving to be, effective. And, you got blokes that can't get a game, and still a bit of a debate on what our forward line is going to look like come September as well too, what our most effective forward line is going to look like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you've got someone like Ben Brown, who we know what he can do in front of goals, struggling to get a game at the moment, you know that your side's shaping up pretty well, and you can have someone like him trying to fight his way back into the side. One person I did want to ask about, because every time I see him get the footy, I just can't help but get excited, and that's Cozzy Pickett. The things that this man can do with the football at such a young age are unbelievable. Is it the same as me for you guys? When you see him get the ball, you just think something special is about to happen here?
Oh, gee, I tell you what, it's it's sort of like watching Cyril, I reckon, back in the day. It's a big one, and I know Cozzy in his little interview says he watches Cyril his highlights and everything, and you can see his game developing like Cyril's did. Even like the little dashes along the wing, like here and there, and just taking blokes on. It's just, it's something that we haven't had since. I mean, Jeff Garlett had little glimpses, but then going back to the flash days of Aaron Davey, I had 36 on my back as a young kid watching Aaron Davey, and then, if it was in the same boat, that 36 runs pretty close to me, and I always love seeing a 36 run around for the Dees, and to see that continue in Cozzy Pickett, it's pretty amazing to see, knowing that it's not only just from a Melbourne, by my point of view, but seeing it from supporters as well, and seeing someone that he plays for Melbourne, it's exciting to watch because when was the last time we had someone that was bloody exciting to watch?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Simo. I think he's just such an intelligent footballer for such a young age as well too. He's not just, he's not one-dimensional. He's not just looking for the goals every time. He's team first, always tries to hit up make the right play, hit up the right player in the forward line, just trying to do everything to keep the ball in play. And yeah, there's some fancy footwork that he goes along with it, but you can just feel the crowd, the buzz that it generates every time he gets near the ball. Like we're sort of saying on our episode this week against the Brisbane game. I mean, he only didn't have to touch the ball that many times. I think he had it 9 times, kicked 3 goals, 3. But it's a real theme of this year of players having such a huge impact without actually having to touch the ball too much. And just you can see blokes are absolutely shitting themselves when he's coming charging. You see some of the draft footage before he got drafted about just how much he wanted to, how much he loves to tackle. The D's, did an absolute number in that draft, and I think all credit to him for making that trade with North Melbourne for the future pick and really identifying somebody that they knew would fit into our system. And I think if you were any other team that selected in and around that pick that year, you'd be scratching your head and thinking, why on earth wasn't he picked earlier?
Yeah, I think you guys have as you said before, like that perfect balance. There's no holes in your team. It's almost like you guys are ready to go. And I've been speaking. I've got actually got a lot of Melbourne mates, and which is interesting. And they're up and about at the moment, and they reckon, like, is it easier to be where you are now, like on top of the ladder, 10-1 or whatever you are, like with only one loss, or would you prefer to be 4th or 5th and then make that charge towards the end? Like it's almost like. It's like the expectation's so high. I know, like you're so excited that you're on top and there's a possible premiership, but does that almost work against you?
It's an interesting point because you can only beat who comes out against you every week. So, as a Melbourne sport, I mean, you can never look too far ahead considering what's happened in the past. So yeah, 1 week at a time for us. And I think, you say, would you rather be back in the pecking order and working your way up? Like obviously that happened in 2018, but as we sort of did occasionally in that year, we did drop games where we probably should have won. But I think this year, like as I just said, you can only beat what's in front of you. So we just roll with the punches. I think seeing it every week and we're not looking too far ahead. I mean, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, we'll win the flag. We're sitting 11-1, but being a realist, we want to be performing at the peak of our powers, come finals time.
Yeah, and I think, we mentioned with Fitzy last week about how much it'd be so much better if this, we're currently at round 20 and rolling into September with this sort of same form. But, the realisation of that is that we're not, and I think we just have to manage our expectations and just make sure that, they're doing all the right things. I think they're all taking the right mentality about that we're only halfway through the season. They haven't achieved anything yet. And, players have come out and said they hate losing. They don't want to lose. So it's, we're bound to lose, to drop a couple here and there leading up to, coming up to September. But I think that the headspace and the message that's being sort of promoted by the coaching group and the club is that they're all they're all taking the right approach to this, and they know that it's not won in rounds 10 or 11 or 12. It's won in September, and I think that all the players would understand that, the job's only half done, and just looking at who's ahead, respecting each opposition for who they are and what rocks up on the field each week, and they're the only things that they can control at this stage. So yeah, hard to manage expectations, but far out to knock off the grand finalists and the top 4 contenders is pretty exciting in terms of seeing as how we've done it as well too. But just important that we keep that going and that consistency continues to roll on.
And you touched on it just before as well when you said that you really seem to be enjoying the wins. And that's the biggest thing I've noticed from an external point of view, is that after every game, it doesn't seem like the wins are getting to the boys' heads. You just seem so focused on, all right, we got the win, enjoy it tonight, but, let's move on to next week type thing. And I don't know, I know in 2018 when Richmond had a really good run through the home and away season, obviously dropped out in the prelim that year, but we won most of our games. We were just coming off a flag. So it was almost like we thought, it's almost like we got a bit carried away that year and we thought it's just all going to fall in our hands. Whereas I feel like the difference between that and what you guys are doing this year is you're just enjoying them so much more, and because you know how hard they are to get to win games these days, and you're just taking it all on board that way.
Yeah, 100%. I think it'd be really cool to, find your grasp of this, Quinn, because, you look at your years, 2017, 2019, those 2 flag years, you guys looked like everyone read you off, because, you started the season pretty poorly, but then obviously a form that's pushed you into, really coming home strong. It's such a complete different polar opposite to what we're going through now. It would be, really interesting to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, obviously it's been well documented that Richmond seem to leave their runs a little bit late in the year. And it's worked for us, so I can't complain with that. Although I do like the early dominance that I'm seeing from you guys, because I think it just gives the players a lot more confidence going forward. I hate relying on the fact that we might have that run late. Like even this year, we've had a pretty poor start and people keep saying to me, but it's Richmond, you guys will have a late runs, but you don't want to hang your hat on that, because that's not always going to happen, and you can't leave it too late. It's such a fine line. Because I think what you guys are doing is you're building enough confidence within the playing group to say, we've knocked off Geelong, we've knocked off Richmond, we've knocked off Brisbane, the Bulldogs, you've knocked off everybody that there is to knock off on the top of the ladder. It's going to be giving you guys confidence going into we're not near finals yet, but after the bye, finals will come so quickly, and all these wins will start to build a lot of confidence in you boys, I'd imagine.
100%. I think the biggest thing for me is, well, obviously we're on the road at the moment, but it'd be really awesome to see, especially this year, our maturity really stand up in those games. We've got Port Adelaide and West Coast over at their grounds to finish the year off. So it'd be really good to, take those scalps there to really, put our foot down again, because I think they're the only 2 teams we haven't beaten in the top 8. Obviously we haven't played them yet, but it'd be really, really awesome to see us flex our muscles against those 2 teams.
Yeah, I feel like the Port Adelaide over in Adelaide one is the big one for me. Every time I know Richmond go over there, I'm nervous the whole week building up to it, just because it's such a hostile crowd. The environment over there is completely different. So especially that late in the year, that'll be such a great test for you boys before you head into finals. And like you said, if you can get a scalp there, then there'll be so much confidence in the playing group moving into finals. And I'd be very, very surprised if you guys don't get a top 2 finish this year, let alone top 4. So you're going to secure that double chance more than likely at this stage. And who knows, you win round 1 straight into the prelim. It's just the opportunities are endless if, especially with that kind of confidence.
Mate, just listening to you speak then, I just keep shaking my head, because I keep thinking wow, Melbourne are actually 11-1. When the hell have I gone anywhere near to experiencing this in my 26 years of living? The fact that it's just a weird sensation to know that, wow, Melbourne are actually the team to beat, which is, a really weird situation considering it's mid-season. But God, I just hope that we just keep pushing along. It's just one of those things where I just, I've got complete faith in them, because, they've shown it all year with a second half specialist. I don't think, you look at the stats, how many second halves have we lost for the year? Probably maybe 1 against the Crows potentially. But, apart from that, it's, a team that's really built on, belief, and that belief which goes across to the 4 quarters with it, having Burjo on our side and being able to build that real strong fitness base, but also have trust in our system.
Yeah, I think trying to wrap your head around the fact that you guys are a very good team is the thing that, well, for me anyway, it took me the longest to get used to is, heading into games and everyone going Richmond are the clear favourites here. And I'm thinking, oh, really? Like the Tigers, we're garbage, but it takes a while to get used to. But yeah, obviously lap it up while it's there because it's such an amazing feeling.
When you're talking about the Port Adelaide game, Quinn, it was just when it was comparing some of the 2018 and 2021 stuff and thinking about the game that we played over in Port Adelaide 2018. So we'd just come off the bye. We'd lost to Collingwood in the Queen's birthday game, but we were sitting 8-4 after the bye and looking pretty good. And Port Adelaide, I think, might have been top at the time or top 2. I'm trying to remember where it was. But I remember it was over in Adelaide and we just absolutely failed to turn up. I remember watching it at a mate's place, having a few beers, and we were so absolutely furious about how, this whole hype and expectation. I think, not that I'm foreseeing any parallels to that for this season, but I think that was a really big talking point about, not so much, talking about the games that we're expected to win, but games that we expected to turn up and actually compete against. And I know that after that game, I think Glenn Bartlett came out and gave us huge whack publicly. Our president at the time, it's not too often that your president of your club comes out and sort of, gives you a bit of a public whack about, how you sort of performed on the field. So that was a really big thing, but I think that there's no danger of that happening this time. But you're exactly right. They are huge tests over in the West. And again, we talk about famous wins over in the West before the prelim, about a month earlier, we had this absolutely unforgettable victory over in West Coast in round 21, where T-Mac kicked that goal out of the goal square, sort of half slung around. Still, we'll never ever forget that. And I'm very grateful I didn't buy tickets to the prelim. I was very close to spending about $2,000 on flights over there. It was to go and watch the prelim and far out. I'm very glad that I didn't, but would have been a pretty sour trip on the way home. But I think there's some huge differences in that, even though a lot of learnings from it, especially that core group as well.
Just quickly touching on the president, you said gave the team a bit of a clip publicly. Personally, I don't mind that because it shows that sort of ability to not just be the nice guy with the club and sort of show that a firm position and sort of take a stance like that. And I know Marcus has been talking to me a bit about this at Carlton. He's been saying there's too many nice guys and everyone's trying to be too nice to each other. Are you a fan of the president coming out and giving the club a bit of a clip publicly, or do you think that's something like in terms of revving the team up, or do you think that's something that should probably be kept in house? And obviously it's not great to see from a fan's perspective because you want to be doing better than that. But do you mind that, or is that something you prefer to keep in house?
Probably looking back at it now, in hindsight, I don't mind it. I think it was given a bit of grief at the time, and I think in the media it probably wasn't really well received, or it wasn't a good image. But maybe I don't know. Maybe that was just from the club's history and potentially in our season of somewhat success at that stage, even that was a hiccup in what was a relatively successful season to that point. I suppose supporters and maybe outside and external media looking in and saying, well, I don't know, is that a good look? Is that the support that they give him? But I think you're right in terms of the passion is there. They only want what's best for the club and what's best for the supporters. So you can understand that maybe that's lighting a bit of a fire underneath them. But we should have had plenty of that after ballsing up the 2017 round 22 game against Collingwood and missing out on the finals there. So I don't think that there was any other reason for that. But no, I think looking back to it, I probably don't mind it. But I think at the time it probably wasn't well received by fans. And I don't know. It'd be interesting to know what the players would have felt. Whether that's something that gets addressed in the rooms like straight after the game, or the fact that it got leaked out, well, the fact that it was a public statement, to the media. It'd be interesting to know what players would have felt, because that coaches singling out players in press conferences about things that they did wrong was sort of a bit of a no-no. Like I think that happened a couple of times a few years ago, and they got criticised for it. So I guess it's that balance of where does that feedback lie? Where's the right place for that? I don't know, Simmo. What do you think, mate?
Well, I suppose I mean, I do love a good spray. It depends. It depends on what or how you perceive it. I mean, different people are different. Obviously, to a degree, it kind of worked, but I think this was definitely said when Simon Goodwin took over the reins. Like he said, we wanted to be hard to beat and like real tough. So for us not to be able to show that, that's obviously something, or the reason why something was so publicly brought out and brought to people's attention, because we weren't, that was our label, but we didn't, we weren't able to showcase that. So, if we weren't able to showcase that label, like what are we? So I suppose that's why that question was posed to us. And I think we responded okay with it, but yeah, it's interesting.
What about you, Marcus? Like, you think about talking about Carlton, and if that's the sort of thing that, especially at the moment, I can't imagine you'd be too happy with your boys, and the fact that expectations have been pretty high, especially with Teague having that sort of the Teague train whole movement, and then everything hasn't really come to fruition since then.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think that's what made Carlton such a successful team over the years, is that ruthlessness, that savageness, and a culture where people were made accountable for things, and weren't afraid to have that publicly come out and state what's wrong. So and yeah, as Quinn said before, I just think Carlton have got too many nice guys at the club at the moment. There's not a lot of people that demand respect there, and I think this external review that's happening at the moment is exactly what needs to happen. And I'm glad they brought it forward. It was meant to happen at the end of the season, and they brought it to now. So, yeah, I'm all for that. And just holding players and officials to account, really. And yeah, I mean, like as you said with you guys, you had 2 years there in the wilderness after 2018, and some hard truths need to be said, and I think that's the way to go. Otherwise, you're just going to keep living in mediocrity if you keep accepting it and accepting honourable losses. So, yeah, as a Carlton fan, I'll take anything that's going to make the club better. That's for sure.
Well, you saw when the Dees, it was back in 2012, where we took on Jack Grimes and Jack Trengo as co-captains. Do you see, like, if Carlton were to go down the same path with Sam Walsh, do you think you guys would have the same drop as us, or do you reckon it'll actually really benefit the club?
I think Sam Walsh is a very unique player. He's a once in a lifetime kind of player. He is. I think he'd be perfect in the role. But personally, for me, I think a player like Jacob Werdering would probably be slightly ahead of him in terms of that captaincy role. Apparently, around the club, he's regarded as one of the best leaders there. I think Sam Walsh, yes, he's a superstar and he's already acts like a leader, but geez, he's only played 50 games. So it's a pretty big responsibility, and especially at a club like Carlton that's huge and has a lot of fans and a lot of angry fans, especially with the way we've been going. So I think Werdering would be the ideal one. But in terms of where I think we're at different, like, because with our list demographic, we're ready to go in terms of the age group and the kind of players that we've got in there. So that's why it's a lot more frustrating. So I think if someone like Walsh Werdering was captain, I think it would be perfectly fine, and it might even make a player like Cripps play better and takes a bit of pressure off him.
I guess there always is that danger of picking a captain that's too young and putting that pressure on them too early. I know, going back to Carlton again, Cripps was given the captaincy role quite early, and even with my boys Richmond, Cochrane was captain at quite a young age as well, and he did have probably a drop for 1 or 2 seasons there where he wasn't quite himself. So there is always that danger of doing that, and that's why I really like what Melbourne have done in terms of having Max Gawn as the captain. Like, he's such a seasoned, it's weird to call him a veteran because it feels like he hasn't been around that long, but he has. He's been around a surprisingly long time, and he just seems to lead the troops really well. He must be so happy with what he's been providing since giving that captaincy role.
Mate, the fact that you've got such a cultural figure as your captain makes things, I don't know, it's just like, I think him as a person represents the club really well. And I think everyone, by seeing him as a leader, like, you look at his growth compared to when he was drafted to now, like, you think he was never going to be that player. But for a bloke that's worked that hard, they can rub off a lot on our younger blokes in the club. So, being able to see, his progression, is a real testimony to our club at the moment and where we've come from. So yeah, just to see that general growth across the whole togetherness of our club is yeah, something that's really, really good to see.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say we've been obviously talking about the differences between 18 and 21 being two very similar seasons in terms of just sort of jump coming out of nowhere almost and having really successful seasons. But what you guys are probably around more Melbourne circles than I'm sure Marcus and I are. I know Marcus has a few Melbourne mates, but what's the general vibe and consensus from, you know, the Melbourne circles you guys would be a part of? Is everyone feeling pretty similar at the moment or pretty up and about?
Being in Melbourne supporter groups, like you saw how quickly people would jump ship when we're down. So it's actually been really, really interesting. I know my partner's dad he actually made a Facebook status saying, you know, is there any ski season tickets still available? Because yeah, he completely lost faith in us in our first half, and I was like, I just commented on it saying interesting, because like obviously, well, he's you know, around his 65, so he's seen Melbourne just be, you know, mediocre for so many years, and he's seen this happen before. But I don't know, it's in myself. Like, I mean, I'm a very passionate supporter of the Dees, but I'm also realistic. So, you know, I've always got faith in them. Even in our darkest years, I was like, oh bugger it, I'll still go. I'm still going to support. Like, even as a young tacker, I'd be waving the floggers, having a bit of fun with it. Even though we're getting done by 10 goals, I was like, bugger it, I'm having a bit of fun. So you know, seeing Melbourne supporters comment like that, I'm like, you know, think about now, what were we? Well, 10-1 before the win happened. You think what we've done so far during the year. I mean, why can't you see that happening against even the best sides? Which obviously we saw it in the second half, but, you know, being able to make that switch, you know, it shows us, to me, it shows a lot of faith. So, but to go with that, I think the realistic, those really positive Melbourne supporters see the excitement week to week. I mean, I'm at school, we've got my office lady is actually a Demon supporter as well, and she, you know, well, obviously we've been in lockdown for the last couple of weeks, but she'd be playing the Melbourne theme song before on the bell on the Monday mornings. I was like, oh, this is great, like, you know. And you see other kids and stuff getting around that, and we've actually got some new supporters. Because I'm trying to get a heap of Melbourne supporters in the school. So yeah, it's been good fun.
It's been, yeah, like my circles are probably pretty small in terms of what me and Simmo and yeah, sort of family, and I got a couple of other mates here and there, but I think between me and Simmo, the messages that sort of fire off in that, and then between my brother and my old man, and my dad's still one of those guys that hasn't quite recovered from the '88 final where Jim Steins, cost a 50-meter penalty. So, you know, as much as I love him, he's, you know, he can't watch a fourth quarter if it's within 15 points. If there's 3 minutes to go and we're 30 points up, he's still not satisfied until the siren's gone. But I think, yeah, personally, I think I've been, surprised at myself, and I think other people sort of said it in previous years where I've sort of been out and loud. I've actually been quite settled about it, I think, this year, and I think half of it might be that I spend an hour each week talking about it online and recording it and posting it. But I think the other half of it is just, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird feeling. I am excited, but I'm not getting overexcited about it. I think about those finals in 2018 in the Geelong and Hawthorn games, and they're some of the most memorable moments of my life. Like, you know, the fact of winning those games and feeling the buzz around the crowd there. But I know Kate Roffey said it the other day about, she thought that at the Anzac Day Eve game, she thought that the atmosphere there and the buzz around the ground was actually more intense and more exciting than it was in 2018, which, I mean, I was there as well, and I think, Simmo, you were there as well, and hard to figure, because that memory is so fondly held in my mind, and about how loud that was. But you even see it watching on TV, and just even the game up at Giant Stadium where it looked like they had a quarter of a stand filled of Demon supporters, but still how loud that was. And yes, you got your close circles, but I think seeing them every time they pan to the members at the G, you know, prior to this lockdown, you see how much red and blue was out and about. Getting on the train to the footy, I think you're seeing them out and about a lot more. And I think the entire vibe of Melbourne, and I don't think it's not cocky and it's not arrogant. I think people are just grateful for what it is at the moment, and just, yeah, really just enjoying the ride, I suppose.
I can definitely vouch for the noise at the Anzac Day Eve game because I was there as well. And pretty early on, I knew that we weren't going to get the win against you boys. But I'm one of those nuffies that won't leave the game early. I stayed till the final siren, and the whole way through, I was just the Melbourne crowd was deafening, which is something. I mean, for me personally, I've never really experienced that before. Hearing Melbourne supporters so up and about, so. I mean, obviously, I'd rather it have been us that night, but it is good to see, Melbourne supporters being able to enjoy this success that they've been deprived of for so long.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I know you reached out to a few fans about what their thoughts were. What was the general consensus from them?
Yeah, so we put out a bit of a post again, sort of comparing 2018 to 2021, and we understand that there's no end point to 2021 yet. We're sort of trying to sort of align about maybe what our emotions are at the moment and where we see the playing side and the similarities and differences between it. So we've got a couple of fan responses here. The first one we've got from Jai McLaughlin from Facebook. He said, 2018 we were all out attack and we could get scored against easily. In 2021 we're much more balanced and set up well defensively. We also stop teams getting a run on and can change plans mid-game. And I know that's been something, I think we mentioned it before, about seeing situational game changes. I think early on in Goody's career, we sort of felt like that we had plan A and there was never any plan B, and it didn't seem from the couch or from the stands that there was any changes going on throughout the game. And I think that's something that making changes when need be, like for instance the Brisbane game, resetting at halftime and coming out again. Even the Adelaide game, we were clearly beaten at halftime and then managed to work our way back in the game. Yeah, the result didn't fall in our favour at the end, but just to see us, that ability to change there, I think has been really big. Simmo, what have we got? What's the next one there?
It's one I really, really rate. Quick and simple. So it's from Shetsky. I'm assuming, I think they might be from Twitter. So boys have become men. And that goes to probably one of our favourite words, which we use in pretty much every week of our podcast, and that's maturity. So yeah, definitely love that quote. I love that.
Next, we've got Paul Vine, who said, this year we play as a professional team and we're not playing for ourselves. They are playing as a group, not just one bloke trying to pull his team over the line, and it's the whole side doing so, and we're having fun whilst doing it. So, as you said, it talks about seeing the smiles and the laughs, and Quinn, I think you sort of mentioned before about just watching how much the boys are enjoying the wins, and I think, see how loudly the boys sung the song on Friday night after that hard-fought win, or even after the Sydney game, which, they absolutely left everything out there, and it was... that contest wasn't decided up until the final siren there. It's certainly something they're certainly enjoying their footy. I know that can make a huge impact on a playing group as well.
I definitely love what you're saying there, Tim, because I actually noticed on the TV how loud we were, because the sound quality was actually nowhere near as good as what it normally is. So, seeing that joy was absolutely massive to see. The next one comes from Haley Bristow. So in 2018, most times we were challenged, we fell away. And that's why we missed the top four, 100%. There's things that kept creeping into that year where, once we did, if the team's got a run on, we did struggle to make that adjustment. And I think the biggest difference between then and now is we can make the adjustment on field rather than waiting to a break.
And then the last one we've got here is from Mark Peppo, who said 2018 was a contested ball then spread. We had 8 behind the ball, allowing us greater chance to win a centre clearance stoppage or defend from half-back. So, talking about that diamond structure that was, so often commented in by the media. Throw in a bit of frost ball for good measure, and life was exciting. 2021, it's all about rock-solid defensive structure, slingshot from half-back and lock in the forward line. The plan B, we actually have a plan B, is down the boundary stoppage after stoppage and get the outside spread or switch the wings where Langdon is the link man, which I think, some really spot on points that he's made there. I think Frostball is, certainly something that was exciting. It wasn't the most talented kick, but it was, gave a bit of unpredictability to the ball coming out of our back line there. That was a little bit sad to see him go, but he hasn't done too much since he's moved to Hawthorn, and I think playing from half back and our forward, our ball movement really begins from half back. And we sort of talked about how much centre clearances have been a bit of an issue for us. And I think teams have been reading our taps really well, but then they get sucked into bombing it long, and then it just gets picked off by May or Lever, and then the ball just gets, as I said, slungshot from there and moved pretty quickly into the forward half. So certainly some pretty accurate descriptions there from our loyal listeners.
From an external point of view, when you think of the better Melbourne players, obviously Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, Max Gawn, Cozzy Pickett, you look in the back line, you've got like May and Lever, like you mentioned. But from your perspective, it could be any one of those guys as well, but from your perspective, who would you say would be the most valuable player on Melbourne's list at the moment?
It is so hard to pick one of those because they're all equally as important, I reckon, to our club. But for me, once Lever went down, we lost. Like, I don't know if you've noticed when there was no crowd against the Dogs, but you notice how loud and how well he structures us up. So for me, if I was to pick out those or the main players, would be Jake Lever. I think just his voice and what he brings, makes us that real defensive unit, and I think he just fits in perfectly with the way we play.
Yeah, it is a hard one. There could be a pick of any of those. There's a fair few blokes there that certainly could be up for it. Probably somebody that hasn't had his best year to date, but I still think that at the end of the day, our skip Max Gawn, like at his best, and his ability to be able to impact, the ball at the ruck, taking his own centre clearances and just running with the ball like a ruck rover, taking, towering marks in the back half and saving our ass on a defensive end, or even popping up forward and kicking a left foot snap in the forward pocket like he did against Brisbane on Friday night. I think at his most damaging, because I think with, say for instance, he goes down, Jacko is an incredible insurance policy, but it's a lot of responsibility to shoulder, and I think, he's the closest like to like that we have in terms of ruckman and somebody else that can be as agile around the ground and is certainly more agile than Max. But I just think where it all begins, I feel like Gawny's our most valuable player. It could easily be Track, who's also multifaceted as well too around the ground. It could easily be Oliver for his work in the contest, but I just think from starting from scratch, I think Gawn, it starts with him, and I just feel that if something was to happen to him, I feel like MVP is a big thing. It depends how you read it. Is it somebody that has had the best individual season? Is it somebody that means the most to your team? I know it gets talked about in NBA a lot about how you adjudicate MVP, and I'm thinking about if it was a player that was no longer in your team, what would the whole left by that player look like? So that's my take.
I think that's the best way to look at it, is if that player left, who leaves the biggest hole. Because like you said, in the NBA, they talk about it a lot, where it could be someone, I don't know, let's just say like Steph Curry, for example, and he might have a 55-point game and the Warriors still lose, for example. And it's like, well, he did that, but was he the most valuable because he still couldn't drag the team over the line? It's easy for this year for you boys because you're winning most of your games. But like you said, I think it's about who leaves that biggest hole. And I'm curious to see, Marcus, who you'd think would be Melbourne's most valuable player from your point of view. You and I obviously not being Melbourne supporters. Who would you think it is? Because I've got mine. I'm just curious to see what you'd think.
Well, I was tossing up between Max Gawn and Petrarca, but I just think, Tim made a great point there. Like if Gawn goes down, then they could struggle in that department. And I think just the influence he has on games and his presence around the ground as well is huge. So for me, I'd say Max Gawn, and seeing him firsthand as well, especially when you're playing against him, you that's when you realise how good a player is when they're playing against your team and how much he dominates. And so for me, I'd say Max Gawn just over Petrarca, but you could choose any of them.
Yeah, see, I'm going a different one. I'm going Stephen May. It's like you said, it's so hard. You could pick any of them, but for me, I think Stephen May is a big one. Like Lever, they play similar roles in the sense they're both kind of generals back there, but I think May having that little bit more maturity from what I'm seeing anyway. He sort of directs a lot of the backline players down there and all that, and I feel like when he misses games, not that your backline is left exposed, but you can definitely notice the difference when May's not there to take out that key forward. Like, if they're against Richmond, he'll take Tom Lynch, and presuming he probably takes Harry Mackay from Carlton as well, just as example. So I think when he's gone as well, at least, you definitely notice the difference there.
Yeah, I think there's no argument about how influential May's been on his games, and I think we're incredibly lucky to get him back as early as we did after that Geelong clash with that eye, and just a freak accident like that. We're lucky that we do have some pretty sound depth down back at the moment, and we're sort of seeing that with Petty being able to sort of seamlessly slot in and fill Tomo's role at the moment. And again, you sort of feel devastated for Tomo and all the success that we're having this year at the moment, but yeah, he's just continually week after week. You rarely see him get beaten, and you really see him have an off game. And you're right, you take him out of that side. It's not concerning because Lever's a great somebody else that's going to fill the gap there, and obviously has equal voice in that back line. But even still, there's no question about the role and the impact that he has in our side and as a total.
Now, it could be the same player, but who would you say your favourite player is? Simmo, I know you said you have a number 36. You were when you were a kid. I know had a 36 on your back, and Pickett's living up to that. But who would you say your favourite player is?
I'll let you go first, Timmy. I've got to think about this.
Are we talking current favourite player, or are we talking about player all time?
Ooh, let's do both. Let's do both. Let's do a current, let's do a current and then an all time, because I'm curious to see who your all time is as well.
Oh, what? It's hard to go past Maxi, just I suppose. I still remember that game against Geelong in 2015, where he just had an absolute blinder. It was almost his coming out party. He played a handful of games, and just watching him sort of knowing that he'd been around the system for what had been there, about 6 years or so. And then I think Simmo sort of talked about his growth and his progression as he's now developed into the leader of the club. And we asked Fitzy last week about, drafted in the same year and great mates, and said, did you ever foresee that this bloke who was, obviously well documented, having a fag on the way to training and a bit of a jokester and maybe not taking it so seriously at the start, to see him being the captain of an AFL football club, moving forward? And he's just like, not a chance. So for me, I think, his overall character and just his influence that he has on all the playing group, the way that the fans get around him, and I just love everything that he does that he goes around, that everything that he's all about the game. And I think he doesn't just affect it in one asset. He's completely got a very diverse range of skills, and I think for me, just from a sporting point of view, I think being multi-dimensional is so rare, and he's a once in a generational player, and any team would love to have him. So I love watching him play, and you always get a smile when he kicks a goal or takes a big contested mark, whether it's down forward or down back, and then you watch some of his tap work when it works, and when it's not read by opposition and it leads to a fast break goal or something like that. It's hard not to love. I'm going to stick it there at the moment. I'll think about the all-time player and then see where I can come back to. I've got a couple of mine, but I'll think about it.
I've spoken about it enough. I'd have to say Cosy Pickett, just more so of what he brings, and I suppose the excitement around him. No matter what, I know Tim, and I also got another close mate I play footy with. He's a Dees supporter, and whenever Cosy kicks a goal when they're playing, I always have to message both of you. So it'd have to be Cosy for now. The old-time favourite, I'll have to go with someone that I had a jumper of as well. The current player would have been a hard one, because I used to have Nathan Jones's number on my back, knowing how much he drove the Melbourne Footy Club, and the fact that how much he did for the club too. So he was quite close to me, but obviously when we've made the transition to being half decent, I had to I jumped ship with Cosy just because of how much he brings. But as a past player, I used to have his number as well. Adam Uze. And when he come back to the club as a coach, I've been begging for it for years, actually, because I wanted him to come back and just bring his knowledge, because I knew what he was doing in Hawthorn was doing something pretty amazing. So having him back at the club has been really great to see. And, just those freakish things he used to do, and when the crowd would go, ooh, it was unreal. So yeah, having that player to really look up to, and that silky left foot. I remember that goal against Freo, that was freakish. And even that goal against Essendon early on, which funnily enough was actually the first time I've ever been on the MCG for the Troy Broadbridge Memorial game in 2005. So that was a memory I really hold deep. And, I was right in front of where all the Oz kickers got to sit. So that was a very fond memory of him.
All right, so
Awesome.
going back to all time. I think it's hard to think about sort of the players that I grew up watching, but I think you had your Jimmy Steins, you had your David Neitz, but I think Russell Robinson was somebody that you would go and that was super exciting to watch. Somebody that was always good for a bag of goals, but his leaps for goal and the goal squares and his ability to be able to kick a bag even if it was in the second half of the game. I think Queen's birthday. What year was it? Where he kicked a number in the second half, and he was just somebody that you can tell as a young person, as a young supporter, it was somebody that you go to the footy to watch. And there's probably, we talk about players that you want to go and watch live, and I think from a Melbourne perspective, Cozzy's somebody that puts asses in seats that people want to go see, and it's completely, it's a whole different experience watching him live. And I think he was somebody that, like Aaron Davey at the time, and like David Neitz, and watching all these players that had a huge impact at that time in a reasonably successful era for the Dees as well too. He was somebody that, had a bit of flair about him. He's a bit of a smart ass, wasn't afraid to, have a bit of a chat to other players and just everything that was about. And then having met him a couple of times sort of a few years ago and stuff at functions and that, he still loves the club so much. And I think that only further kind of enhances your admiration for him, and is certainly somebody that, you could easily sit back and get stuck down a YouTube hole watching highlights of his speckies in the goal square for sure.
Oh, he was a freak sometimes when it went down there and you saw him get up high. It was there weren't many that could do what he did. Before I get to who you guys think would be a most underrated player, I want to quickly ask about Nathan Jones. I know Simmo just touched on him then. What's it like? What's the feeling behind him sort of being in and out of the side? Obviously, he's given so much to the club and all that. And then now that you guys are at that point where you're pretty successful, it's that tough mix between, do you want to give the fairy tale story and let him play every week, or you got to be ruthless. And if he's not in the best 22, he's not in the best 22. Are you guys? Is it a good thing that someone like Nathan Jones is struggling to get games because the talent pool is that much higher, or would you like to see him get games just to be nice, I guess, if that makes sense?
This is a really good question because, well, obviously you saw him play his 300th game against the Tigers, and that was, a pretty amazing, memorable moment for him, and what's going on during the moment. And obviously he's one that's stuck fat with us during all these dark years and everything. So, well, to be honest, when you're in a side that's doing so well, you can only put out the best 22 you've got. Because I mean, you put your best 22, which you think is going to get the job done each week in, week out. Not just because you can't be gifting games, especially when we are tracking quite well, and you want to be having your best side out there each week. And yeah, it's a hard one because you can look at it both ways. There's always going to be supporters that are thinking, oh, geez, it'd be great seeing him just lapping it all up. But I think, to be honest, he is lapping it up because, seeing of what he's done to now, I think he's just really getting around the boys and just constantly, he's obviously there. He's obviously, putting in the effort just as much as the boys playing. So, there could be a time where he's called upon, so being ready is the best thing for him. To be honest, it'd be great to see him be a part of the side, but yeah, it's a really interesting one. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, it is. It is difficult. I think putting yourself in Jonesy's shoes and sort of thinking about how he would be trying to process the whole situation. I mean, it would have been an interesting conversation, I think, at the end of last year when it came to contract talks about, where do we see you fitting in next year? Obviously, his future was up in the air, and there was this whole, I guess, narrative about him getting to 300 and sort of joining that elusive club, given that there's only one other player for Melbourne that's reached that number. I think, unfortunately, it was clear that after that game that he got dropped immediately, that they might have just been pushing him through. I know that for everything that the club means to him, I think he would hate to think that he was taking up someone else's spot if he truly believed that he didn't deserve it. I'm sure he's gutted that he's not playing the side at the moment, but at the same time, I think that he's always been a team first person. I mean, captain of the club, multiple best and fairest winner. We know what the club means to him, and I think that the last thing that he would want is to feel like that he was, potentially, his position is not a detriment to somebody else on the side, but I think he would have complete faith in the coaching panel, selection committee that, as Simmo said, like staying ready for when he's called upon. But you know what? There's a high chance that if we get to the finals and we're not, we've got no injuries and stuff, there's a high chance he doesn't get in the side. I don't think, like we sort of talked about, some of these younger players that have been switching in and out. There's probably probably one or two positions that at the moment, with Vin out, that we've got sort of, we've got your Sparrows in, like obviously Petty's in for Tomo, but there's a couple of players there that there's still, I think this, and the forward line obviously they're still trying to work out the kinks, but I don't know whether like Melksham's a good one. I think we were chatting about this last week about who would you rather have in there, Cade Chandler or Jake Melksham. And I was just thinking, well, by experience, when it comes to finals time, absolutely I'd rather Jake Melksham in there, just given experience. And maybe that's a role that gets called upon him when it comes there. And I know his role's certainly changed. He's not the in and under player that he once was, and he's been trialled across half back, half forward, trying to find a sort of a role for him. But I don't think he would he would appreciate being gifted games when it comes to that. And I think the club's done due diligence to get him to 300, but I think it's got to be played purely on merit in terms of like whether his spot in the side is required, and if not, he's just got to stick with it and see what happens. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, Nath Jones isn't an underrated player because you all know what he can bring to the club when he was at his best, especially. But who would you say at the moment on the current list would be the most underrated player in your eyes?
I think one bloke who was really on the fringe, and this is probably Tim's favourite player. You've got a badge, don't you, Timmy? Definitely got a badge of him. Yeah, there he is. A bloke that, I reckon he was on the outer last year. If he didn't, so similar to T-Mac, he's one of those blokes that, if he didn't perform this year, I don't know where his career would go. And it's our number 9. The number 9 at the footy club runs deep. Obviously, you look at, or more so Wolf from Neats, obviously Trenners, obviously tough run with injury and everything. But this bloke, Charlie Spargo, and I'm sure Tim will be able to talk a lot about him, but just the little things he does, just the 1%ers, like you see a couple of knock-ons from the weekend, but his entries inside 50 are just so underrated, which to be honest, as a non-Melbourne supporter, it'd be really interesting to see or hear what your thoughts are about Charlie Spargo, because you probably think, the bloke's only getting like 12 disposals. Like, why is he in the side? Like, I'm sure they've got someone better, but you look at what he does with those 12 disposals, and I tell you what, there'll be a few goals being kicked from that.
I love what he does personally. I mean, we played you guys the other week, and he was doing great things in that forward line. Just his pressure, and he does the things that a lot of people wouldn't notice, and that's what makes your team tick, and that's what makes good teams. So personally, I definitely appreciate him from an outside point of view. I think a lot of my Melbourne friends say the same thing. They absolutely love him as well, and they find him one of the more underrated players in your team. So I reckon he's great.
Yeah, to be honest, if you asked me last year, maybe the year before, about Spargo, I probably would have replied with who. So to see what he's doing this year, I mean, obviously, unless you follow the club closely, sometimes you don't know these other players, but seeing what he's done this year, and like you said, he doesn't get a ton of disposals, but he doesn't need to. He's one of those players that can have an impact with limited amount of touches. And I love what he brings. And, he plays that style of footy that I really enjoy watching as well. So I definitely agree with you, probably being one of the more underrated players at Melbourne. And I mean, it's easy to be underrated when you're shadowed by some of the talent that you guys have, like, you know, Gorn, Petrarca, Oliver, etc. So definitely see why he'd be underrated, but he's also, a freak of a talent.
He certainly is. I think there was a reason why I think we sort of put it to our fans when we have a segment on ours that we, award the player that has the most underrated performance and somebody that doesn't necessarily get the limelight, and that was the overwhelming response. So our Charlie Spargo award each week goes to the underrated performance for the Dees each week, and he's somebody that was easily targeted in the last couple of years. He had a huge role to play in 2018 and sort of burst onto the scene. And having a huge impact then, and then really kind of fell off and was in and out of the side. Wasn't quite sure whether he was going to sort of stick with it or not, or whether he would find a role. But this season is just, the epitome of, I suppose, executing your role and our role players and somebody that is crucial to our team, and just the small little things that he does, as Marcus sort of said. It's just the little things. It's the chase down tackles. It's the tap-ons. It's his footy IQ, I think, is through the roof. I think that his ball use is pretty outstanding. I think what he does going inside 50 and then the forward pressure that he brings as well too. And I think, I think A and B, like Alex Neil-Bullen, is somebody that also has elevated his status into that area as well too. Somebody else that has gone from being fringe player to now required player and is in no danger of losing his side as well too, losing his spot in the side. With everybody just performing as a cohesive unit, and each player there is certainly required, and Spargo is certainly somebody that I know that the fans have all warmed to now and has become a little bit of a cult hero. But it's just those little things, and the fact that you see players go to him after a knock on, after a chase down tackle, after just a really small 1% of play. They go and celebrate that. I mean, that hearing in and around the coaches, they all celebrate that within the four walls of the club as well too. So it's not just, we talk about him being underrated, but I feel like that within the club, he would be very highly rated for his work, as is every member of that club as well too.
Yeah, spot on. I think I can't fault anything you said there about him. It seems to be the man at the moment in Melbourne that probably isn't getting the limelight outside of the club, but within the four walls, like you said, is definitely getting that sort of recognition. Simmo, you called for it earlier before I think we started recording that you wanted to run through our rapid fire questions, which are known as the pressure cooker. You've called for it, so if you guys don't mind, we'll probably run you through a few quick questions, just easy ones, just off the top of your heads. So I don't know if you want to kick this one off, Marcus. I know you normally do. I don't want to take that away from you.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll kick this one off, mate. We'll go in the usual order. If you could delist any player in your team, who would it be?
What's his name? Joel Smith.
Ben Brown.
Ooh,
Ben Brown, controversial. Well, then on the other hand, and I know there's not many gaps in your list at the moment, but if you could add one player from another list, who would it be?
The Bont.
Shit. One player.
I have to go forward, I reckon. There's a sneaky, like a Harry McKay or someone. Or...
You're always on the market.
A lot of our guests have said Harry.
Shit. I'd go for... Oh, fuck. Something here. Let me see this.
So that's a pressure cooker.
Yeah, it is. I need a time limit. Bloody ridiculous. Let's go with a little bit more class and on the outside, and let's go... What name? Jack McRae.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
What was the next one, Quinn? I need to get it up.
I've got it in front of me. Which team?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which team do you love beating the most?
Hawthorn. Fucking
Collingwood, definitely.
Yeah, I love beating both those sides, so definitely on board with that one. And then the last one, and this is the most important question. You're going to be quick. There's no time to muck around with this one here. Who's your favourite Pressure Point co-host?
I'd have to say, unfortunately, I'd have to say Quinn more so because of the little connection we have sharing the same jersey. We touched on pre-chat.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm gonna go for Marcus because I'm enjoying that he's the only person without a pressure point background in his Zoom window there, so he's not conforming to society there.
I missed the memo with that one, that's for sure.
Beautiful. There you go. I think we're running a bit of a tally this year to see who gets the most votes for the favorite pressure point co-host. I think Marcus might just be up one at the moment, so I think with that effort, so
You had a fair lead at the start too, as well.
I did. See, what Marcus decided to do was go behind my back and get people that weren't coming on as guests to tell them who his favorite was. So he's put himself up on the list doing it that way. But it's all
you got to
good.
get creative.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's all good. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. It's been something different for us. Obviously, like you said, we've never done a collaborative episode before, but it's been different as well, talking about a team that neither Marcus or I support, but, obviously flying at the moment. So there's plenty to talk about. And the insight that you guys have for your club, it just shows how you're able to do a podcast like this and keep it running and, make it so successful because you know so much about the boys and you obviously share so much passion for it. So thank you for doing this with us. It means a lot.
It's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks to you both. It's been, as I said, something brand new for both of us as well too. But I think it's good to broaden our horizons a little bit in that sense, and it's nice to have an external point of view as well too. It can be pretty easy to be pretty one-eyed when you're talking about that, and you don't always get the external point of view as well too. So thanks for putting up with our shit today in terms of just talking about the Dees. I'm sure, you guys obviously spend a bit more time covering other sides as well, alongside your own sides as well. But no, really appreciate it. And really good fun, and hope to do it again as well.
Absolutely. And cheers, boys. It's one thing I've really loved. I mean, obviously we finished with a bang there with the pressure cooker, but would you guys mind if we used your little idea there and maybe had a different name for it?
Mate, absolutely. Go ahead, mate. It's there to be shared around and share the love. So absolutely go for it. And like you said as well, Tim, hopefully we can do something like this again as well, especially, heading towards finals time. Could do something like a finals episode and pump it up for you boys if you're still sitting pretty on top of the ladder as well. I'm sure you guys would be pretty keen to do that. So we'll definitely do something heading forward into the future. Absolutely.
I think, and it'd probably be good for us and give it a bit of a change up, and we don't have to always talk about the Dees as well too. It'd be good to talk about where your two boys your sides are sitting at as well too, and Marcus, hopefully something comes of this external review and you get a bit of clarity about where your clubs are going in this direction. Do you think does anyone survive the fallout there, do you reckon?
I think there's going to be a lot of assistant coaches under the pump, there's already one that's fallen off. So I think that's it. And it wouldn't surprise me if Teague was shown the door as well, but I hope that doesn't happen right now. But we'll see how the next month plays out in terms of results. But nothing's going to surprise me, to be honest, of what comes out of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And Quinn, hopefully it doesn't take another 5 years for us to actually make contact with her. After funny talking about how me and Quinn met was, about 6 years ago or 5 years ago out on a Bucks party in Cairns at good old Gilligan's. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are very, very aware of Gilligan's in Cairns. And what are you showing us there, Simmo?
Give it a whirl, mate. So, new sponsor you would see in our podcast for the week. We've actually got Hop End Brewing on board as a sponsor. I saw you guys had some nice sponsors there too. I think it's really good to value local businesses obviously during this time. So getting a little shout out to Hop End Brewing. We've both actually been sipping on one during the podcast. So I've just had a Mango Tango Sour. Quite a nice beer, actually. Goes down quite well. You might think it's a bit odd at the start, but I tell you what, it goes on you nice and quickly. So, if you go down to Dan Murphy's, give it a nice little whirl if you like your craft beers.
I was about to say, as soon as this lockdown ends, it would be a good idea to all catch up and have a few hot pen brews while we're at it. So, definitely. But you beat me to the punchline there with the hot pen brew. Congratulations, by the way. Like you said, such a big thing. And when small podcasts like ourselves are trying to grow, it's such an amazing thing to have sponsors jump on and help support us.
Yeah, thanks, mate. No, super, super proud of that. And as Simmo said, just I suppose grateful that we can support a local business in somewhere that we know quite well and know the people down there and the incredible crew down there and hopefully a few of our listeners can might be made aware of somebody somewhere that they didn't know that existed before, and get themselves a couple of tasty treats.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of, I'm probably going to go have a couple now myself with dinner, so it's heading towards that time. But yeah, seriously, boys, once again, like I said before, I really appreciate you jumping on with us and sharing the Melbourne story thus far. Obviously, there's a long way to go in the season, but the way you guys are sitting at the moment, it's looking like things won't change too dramatically before now and the end of the year.
Fingers crossed for that. And yeah, so it looks like that outros are your thing and intros aren't. Is that the go now? So you're good at outros but not intros?
It depends what I've got planned afterwards. If I got to get somewhere quickly, the outro can be pretty quick tonight.
Fair enough. Well, we're bloody running on nearly an hour and a half now, so it's pretty solid.
That's it. I did say we'd probably get carried away talking footy. It's an easy thing to do once football gets brought up. So no, it's like I said though, it's been a great fun. So
that has awesome. All right, thanks so much, boys, and take care, and definitely let's catch up for a couple of beers once all this shit goes down as well too.